Now that being said, would you take a bullet for me, Matt?
I don't know, Dan. I'm not sure.
That's not agape. That's not agape.
I don't know. That's not. I don't know. I honestly, to be quite frank, I know it's less than 5. Do I know all of them off the top of my head? No.
Good to think about it.
No. For the reason that people might get jealous. Don't get jealous. It may be you. I could be lying right now.
We had acknowledged that if, we at the end of the day, we still have love for each other, and that's why we need to let each other go.
Yeah, mine crashed and burned.
A little bit different there.
Same story, but very different
words
endings.
thrown. Very. Don't ever talk to me again. I don't ever see you. Saw her at Kraft, and she was like, gave me the most insane death stare on the planet. I was like, oof. Okay, I just walked the other way. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, sorry.
Okay, welcome to Better Questions. I'm John, your host, with my co-host,
Matt.
And we're talking about true love. We're on season 1, and we have some couple new guests today. It's not Ronald, although Ronald is actually here in, not a studio, but in the apartment. Say hi, Ronald.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Yeah, so he's still with us. He's not gone. He's not far away. But we have some new guests, but I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start over here. Give us your name, your age, dating status. Yeah, let's do that.
Hello, my name's Jonathon. I'm 29, and I'm currently single.
I'm Daniel. I'm also 29 and also single.
Oh, nice. All right. You want to start us off?
That is true. I am starting us off this time. Yeah, why don't we, I'm out of curiosity, why don't we just quickly run through and kind of see in terms of how many relationships have you had in the past, and why or why not were they good and did they fail?
Define relationship.
You tell me.
Well, the only real relationship I've ever had was 3 years. Actually, it was during COVID, so 4 years ago. This girl, I won't say her name, and that was definitely a toxic relationship. I kind of knew it from the get-go. There was red flags all over it, but I don't know. After a certain amount of time of being single, you find someone that you vibe with. There's that connection. You're kind of like, oh, well, I'll put up with it. But there was like maybe 6 months into it, I already knew. I was like, this is going to end in fire. This is bad. Just stupid fights, squabbling about dumb things. Never ever wanting to concede. Honestly, I wouldn't either, but she would never let me do anything I wanted to do. Never had a situation like that. I'm a pretty independent person. Yeah. So it was like a really weird dynamic to be like told what to do. Like, oh, you need to be here. You need to go to bed. Or I'm like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm. So she was like controlling.
Yeah, not controlling, but it was like weird. It's like manipulative. It was like, oh, I'm all alone. It's like, well, you sleep at my house all day while I'm working. Like, of course you're going to be all alone. Go do something. It was annoying. But yeah, it made me very distant with relationships for a while. That's why I just put my feet on the gas. I have no interest in dating right now.
Yeah, and just focusing on yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. School and that's it.
If that was a relationship, what were you considering? Like, what went through your head for why'd you ask the question of like, well, what's a relationship?
Well, because I've never really been in like an actual relationship other than that one, but that wasn't even a real relationship. Like, I could tell from the get-go, just from, we kind of shotgun dated. I dated her for like a week, and I asked her out, and that was a bad idea. I realized that like a month in, I was like, oof, you got to really take your time dating. You got to really get to know someone before you commit to that, because there's just a lot of red flags, And I kind of just like ignored all that because it was like, oh, I have a girl, she loves me, but it's like sometimes love isn't enough. So that's the main reason, but also because I've kind of just had a string of like, what's the proper thing now, situationships. Yeah. Where it's just like I talk to someone, we like hang out, I've had like several of those where it's like a couple months, couple weeks. So nothing really serious other than that last relationship during COVID.
Okay. One last question before I move to Dan. What made that a real relationship versus the other ones?
Well, having like someone that was like kind of reliant on me in a sense. Not reliant, like she didn't need me, but it's like text her every day, like, good morning, how are you? Plan our day, like, okay, we're gonna go eat. Oh, you want to cook tonight? Because at that point I was living on my own. I had my own like little duplex, so it was like I had my own place. Sorry, I was full independent. So it was more like, it was a relationship. She was living with me after 3 months. Like, like we'd do chores together. There was like good parts of it, but there was just like also a lot of like,
right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like, it was a relationship.
Yeah. I see. Okay. Nice. Dan?
Were we elected for a particular reason? We kind of have a similar story here.
Oh, really?
So my first and last real, quote unquote, real relationship lasted for 2.5 years. I also met her during the pandemic. And after a matter of several months, 3 to 4 months, we also moved in together. So
wow, that's very.
Wow. Okay, that was
Not
full
planned.
disclosure. That
Not
was not
planned.
planned.
Not planned.
Coincidental? Okay.
No,
okay.
not planned.
That was not planned
I
at
didn't
all.
know.
sure.
that
So
was
So that's
planned.
that's pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah. No, what a time. Yeah, I mean, and what a time to date during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Lots of relationships occurred during the pandemic, and pretty much like once lockdowns had ended, you hear about all these relationships starting to end.
Yeah.
Our relationship persisted throughout the years, and then even when I moved to LA, because we met in Seattle, we had lived together for almost 2 years, and then I had moved to LA. We had moved to LA together, just over a year ago, and so we had stayed together for a few months. But like your own relationship, like mine was privy to a lot of gaslighting, a lot of arguments. I don't think we ever really knew how to meet each other halfway. You know, a lot about what true love in a relationship is knowing how to be selfless, even at the expense of the things that you enjoy, your own time, your own sense of enjoyment, right? And I think we just kind of had a hard time, like I said, meeting each other in the middle. I feel like we both made a lot of sacrifices at the expense of our own self-love even, right? And that caused a determinant in the relationship for us. So ultimately we parted ways, but it wasn't without a mutual understanding. And of course it was a rough ending, but at the same time we had acknowledged that if we at the end of the day we still have love for each other, and that's why we need to let each other go.
Yeah, mine crashed and burned.
A little bit different there.
Same story, but very different
words
endings.
thrown. Very. Don't ever talk to me
don't
again.
get me
I don't
wrong.
ever see you. Saw her at Kraft, and she was like, gave me the most insane Death Star on the planet. I was like, oof. Okay, I just walked the other way. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, sorry.
No, I feel you, bro. There's more to it too, for sure. That we'll get into it. We'll get into it.
And another quick question, just to get the full story. Was she your first girlfriend, second girlfriend, third girlfriend? Like, how many relationships have you been in, and what made this one different from other
So
ones?
this was the first girl that I'd ever lived with, and first long-term relationship that had lasted over 2.5 years. It's when I say first real relationship, I think it's kind of like logistically it was a real relationship, like on paper, right?
Yeah.
But
You're talking about the last one is what you're talking about. Logistically was the Okay,
the
gotcha.
last long-term one.
All right,
and
gotcha.
then after and before were all just short-term relationships. Maybe like the longest one being just under a year, just short of a year, right? But hadn't really gone the distance in terms of depth, in terms of sharing, and just didn't really feel like like no other relationship really compared in the sense that I felt what I felt to be true love, right? Like I had more premature relationships prior to that, like during college or even high school, right? And I felt that there was love in those relationships. Those are not real relationships though. Like it's kind of it's hard to compare as an adult. You're like, well, that's puppy love, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask because both of you mentioned about there's a lot of. I think you said there's a lot of love in that relationship, and then you said love wasn't enough. So I kind of want to start off with you. Why do you say love is not enough?
So like, I mean, like with me, I'd see her. It'd make me happy. Like when we'd spend time together, we'd laugh, we'd have a good time.
Yeah.
But like what he was saying is just like there was no compromise. We never met halfway.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I met more than halfway constantly. I mean, I worked full time,
Yeah.
8 to 6.
Yeah.
I would feed her. I would buy us food and I would cook it.
Yeah.
I'd clean. Oh, every once in a while she'd do my laundry, which I fucking appreciated. Excuse my language, but it's just I like that. But it's like when you make it so like scarce.
Yeah.
When you're literally, I come home and you're still sleeping at 6 o'clock. It's like, how do you think that's gonna make me feel?
Yeah.
Like that's like kind of a slap in the face. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm out here working hard, not making the best money, but enough to live on our own.
Yeah.
Like a pretty dope place. It was like literally a duplex, like a house.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah.
And I cut off. You saw it, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it.
And
It was nice.
It was cool. And you know, it was just like really, it was just really jading, and it really made me exhausted. And you know, I loved her even when I broke up with her, but it was just, there was also more to it. She had some issues, so like it tacked onto it, and it was more so it's like I'm not trying to save anybody. Like that was right at the point in my life where I was finally like, I moved out. I had my own car. I mean, I had a girlfriend. I was just doing everything right, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not gonna waste my time with someone who's not actively trying in their life. And
Yeah.
it just really boiled down to, I love her, I miss her, but it's not worth reaching out to, like, oh, you know, let's hang out. It's like, it's at a certain point you have to like grow up and be like, okay, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
Because like relationship, like you were asking the question about relationships, they're important to me. I've never been in an actual one other than that, and I always had this like romanticized idea of like, oh, we'll go, you know, hold hands and we'll go on little walks and talk about our future. Da da da. None of that ever happened. It was more like surface level. Like we did talk about that, but it always felt kind of like BS. You know, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna get married one day. I was like, okay, like the way you say it, it sounds like a fairy tale. You know.
Yeah.
It was never ever like anything super genuine, in my opinion. And I feel like I read that very well. So I kind of just like, I jumped ship before it got too intense. Like, we dated for like a year and a half. Like I think 4 months before COVID, mostly through COVID, and then we broke up. And I think a part of that also was the being indoors constantly.
Yeah.
Just like killed our relationship because I was kind of stuck, like seeing, because I still worked through COVID.
Yeah.
Because we were running the thrift store, or I was rather, and it just made me really annoyed. She like got her unemployment, a lot of money. I was like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then she'd spend it on stupid things. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't even offer to help me with rent. You live here. So just things like that. It's like things where it's like, if you were in a healthy relationship, you'd think they'd be like, oh, well, let me help out here, let me help out there. It was never that. So it's like, you know what, I'm bailing all I can.
It's all too eerily similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you, so am I right in assuming you were the breadwinner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
okay.
the sole breadwinner.
Provider.
Yeah.
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 Well, just like you, I was very much a provider, not just financially, but I think in terms of emotional support, I think in terms of doing chores around the home, like cooking, like she was great at cleaning, which was the one thing I not hated to do.
Yeah.
But I was like,
It's every man's dream. When we come home, like everything's clean. Like,
yeah,
oh,
like laundry, cleaning, fantastic. I'll do the rest,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And that was the deal we had worked out. But you know, this is the thing about being the breadwinner in a relationship. I think ultimately, and there's a statistic that goes something like, you know, for every marriage that fails, like the curve, like it goes up towards the, like, so the divorce rate is higher for marriages that are bound by financial strain, right? And so that kind of a stress is, you know, a given, I think. When you're constantly just like, oh, but I paid for this and I paid for that and you haven't done this, you're going to be bickering all the time about who paid for what and who didn't.
Yeah.
And that sort of resentment builds up over time and is brought back into conversations, into arguments, and is used to gaslight into each other for arguments that have nothing to do with the other.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the worst part too, is that like every relationship that like I come from a first generation immigrant family. So I observed this actively as I was growing up. And those same behaviors, it's amazing how much I mimicked my parents in entering into that relationship as well.
Yeah.
I was
Same
like,
here.
oh, I'm becoming my dad, and she behaves so much like my mom, and you get to understand why our parents went through those same motions as well in overcoming struggle, and there's beauty in overcoming that struggle too.
Yeah.
I think that's why my relationship persisted for as long as it did, because we ultimately pushed each other. We wanted to see each other achieve our own dreams, right, individually, but we realized that we had to do it independent of each other. And my ex-girlfriend and I also had broken up. So 2 years in, we had broken up. We're apart for a couple of months and then made our way back to each other. But it was still the financial aspect. It was still the trauma, right? And of being in that relationship, having gone through so many fights, so many arguments, and just the damage was done. Right? And it wasn't as if we no longer had love for each other, despite everything that we had gone through together, that we had done to each other, but it was just a mutual understanding of we can no longer grow as individuals if we stay in this relationship. You know, should we find each other again? Okay, then we, you know, let's find out. Time will tell. But until then, we've got to grow apart.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because my father's I'm first generation from my father's side. My mother, I think, second generation Swedish. My dad's Romanian. It's a communist country. When it was like 1964, he swam in the Black Sea, went to Turkey, and he has a whole story. And now that you say that, like, I kind of started seeing that kind of parallel in my relationship too. It's like, my dad was the same kind of guy. He worked constantly, made good money, but like he would get mad. It's like, you don't do anything with my money. Very, very Eastern Bloc type of attitude. But honestly, now that you said, it's like I kind of started feeling that way. Not quite like my dad, but it just gets to the point where like, dude, like, come on.
Yeah.
Like it just takes a little effort.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I have to put in so much effort when the littlest amount is not even being applied by you? And it used to drive me insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you kind of see the side of your parents now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
before you just thought they were irrational, or like, why aren't you seeing the other side?
Yeah.
But then now you're kind of like, oh, I'm doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that in my own relationship is where, as the breadwinner or as the sort of provider, I'm starting to see, more of the strain as, it's not just a relationship anymore. Now there's finances, now there's future, now there's where we're living, even like the decor and all those kind of things. And it stops
stressful.
being, it's stressful. It's not so much about the relationship anymore. Did you have a question?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to ask, what do you think about this? Because I personally don't like the idea of saying like there was love, then there was lost, or like love, or the idea of love, love isn't enough. Because I would ask the question of, because for example, in your story and both of your stories actually, that the other person didn't seem to understand your side, and you also didn't. There wasn't the meeting of halfway. But I would argue, shouldn't someone who loves you make that effort to understand you?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. But it's just like it's varying degrees, It's like,
Yeah.
what kind of effort do they want to put in?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, if I'm going to do all this, and it also comes from like, me having all these things that I do, and if you can't even put in like a little bit of effort
Yeah.
in things that I deem worthy, then it's just going to keep crashing and burning.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like at a certain point, it's like, do you even care?
Yeah.
It's like what you're saying, like, I never fell out of love with my ex.
Mm-hmm.
We both loved each other, and that's why she like hates me. It's because she loved me so much, and I was like, I can't do this. And I still loved her. When we broke up, I cried. I wasn't like angry. I wasn't like, oh, get out of here. I can't stand you. It made me cry. I thought about her for months, but it's just like at a certain point, you got to be like, I deserve better. I know I can do better. I hope she can do better. Maybe she can grow without me. Who knows? Maybe one day we meet again. Don't think so.
Yeah.
There was some crazy things happening near the end of that relationship, but you can only hope for the best. But at a certain point, it's like, it's not that the love disappeared. It's just like, I don't want anything to do with that type of love.
It's interesting you say that type of love. I think it's important. How would you define love? Because if you could lose it, what did you lose?
Well, the thing, funny you say lose it. For me, love, true love is ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
If I play too many video games, get off the computer. Okay.
Yeah.
You spend too much money on makeup.
Yeah.
You look beautiful without it. Okay, I'll tone it down. It's just like little things like that.
Yeah.
It's like just like cutting out excess.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time it's like it usually just comes down to stupid things.
Yeah.
Oh, you're texting. Why are you always on Instagram while we're on a date?
Yeah.
Like why are you doing this and that? It's like it's always the little things that just mount into something great.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can't be willing to like compromise on just the little things, when the big things happen, it just will be earth shattering. It'll be like the great one that's gonna happen in California eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said about effort, wouldn't somebody who loves you, like for example, you were talking about how, you were doing all these things and you were the sole provider, but somebody who loved you, shouldn't they be able to see that effort making, see that?
I hope so. I hope you did.
Like, I mean, for myself, I use that as sort of a litmus test, or I use that as an indicator to myself is, do they truly love me? Because I think you can have a lot of different things for someone and still not be love, in the sense that, like, we can have a lot of passion, we can have a lot of great things, we could have trust to, like you said, varying degrees, you could have all these sort of things in it. But if I fundamentally don't feel that, like you said, care, then how can I also simultaneously say you love me?
I don't think you can. I don't know. The thing is, like, when I started dating her, like, I kind of, like I said, going into it, I was kind of like, ooh, there's some red flags.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand how intense things got in a relationship. Like I said, it was my first relationship.
Yeah.
But honestly, going forward, I'm definitely gonna use like just the little things that come out and like really decide if I want to date this person. I'm not gonna just rush into it after a week or 2 or 3. I'm gonna give it like a month or 2, probably even longer.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Just taking the time
Yeah.
just to make sure you know the person. Separated question, unless did you have anything you want to follow up?
Yeah, I mean, my only comment on that is, it's interesting because, I mean, certainly between my ex and myself, we debated that too, like whether this is a healthy love, whether this is a true love, especially towards the end, right?
Yeah.
And I questioned myself a lot throughout the course of it too, like, am I really in love with a person who has shown time and time again that, despite my efforts to, sustain us, right, financially, emotionally, supporting us emotionally, like providing in general, right,
Mm-hmm.
is if it's met with ingratitude and it's met with these offenses and criticisms and gaslighting, am I really, is my love being, redeemed, right?
Yeah.
Is it being met with true love? Is it being reciprocated? That is something I got the answer to a lot later.
Yeah.
Is the thing is that, when it all ended, we had questions. We were like, we knew it wasn't healthy for each other anymore. We had committed too many transgressions where we're like, this is no longer healthy. I don't think we can call this love. Does that mean we've lost love for each other? That's a question I'm still kind of trying to answer. But after a little over a year being removed from it, it's been somewhat reaffirmed that it was real, in the sense, just looking back on those conversations, like we learned to let go of each other because it was true love. If we continue to persist and put each other in this situation where, the other would continue to be unhappy, you cannot call that true love, right? And learning to let someone go for their own happiness is one of the biggest sacrifices you can make.
Yeah.
Because it hurts you, and you know that, hey, like, being without this person, may not what makes me happy at the end of the day, but if it's what makes them happy and what, cultivates their growth, their success, kudos to them, right? And that's where true love comes from, I think. Like, it's not defined by the survival of the relationship.
Yeah.
100%.
It's because you guys had true love that you guys let each other go. And I think that's why it's important to define what true love is for I'm going to call him Pastrama, because I've known this guy since, 6th grade, 7th grade? And we're both John, so just for distinction's sake, I'm going to call him Pastrama, because I don't call him anything else. But Pastrama had mentioned your definition was it's an ultimate sacrifice, which I do like that definition. But I would also add sacrifice for what? Sacrifice for what? Because I think if you're following, for example, that definition, in other words, I'm ready to give up everything, including my life, for this person. Doesn't that also mean part of that sacrifice to be the ultimate, for it to be true love, would mean I have to give up even my own happiness to stick around. I have to give up even my own goals, even my own ambitions for this person. That would be the true form of it. So wouldn't that be, at least using his definition, wouldn't that be sort of opposing that idea?
Maybe like in an extreme.
Yeah.
So like if you could twist that in any which way, we're like, okay, well, you need to be able to show your true love and not leave me. But at a certain point, that just becomes manipulation.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, and I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
but it's like, you're not going to ever experience true love if you're already thinking negative things.
Yeah.
And all relationships, you'd be like, oh, I want Taco Bell tonight. Well, I want Del Taco. Stupid things like that.
Yeah.
That's not going to kill a relationship. You're not going to resent someone for life or something like that. But if you're arguing about why isn't this done, or why are we just like the same old thing? Why is this on the floor? Why is this? It's like, we're not children. We shouldn't be arguing like that. We don't even have kids.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's like true love isn't necessarily defined by like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice everything, even my happiness, because I chose you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like getting to a point where it's like, okay, I can see a partner.
Yeah.
Like, the thing I've always viewed in a woman, for me, is what I define as like the dream partner is if, say we got divorced, I could confidently say to myself, oh, she's with her mother this weekend, she's good.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about anything because I trust her completely.
Yeah.
That's like really what I look for in a woman. Not with the whole of like, oh, one day we get divorced, but it's like, do I trust this woman entirely with everything? I don't have to think about it. If one day we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and we have to split custody, and they're all with her, I don't think to myself, oh, is she doing this again or this? I want to have the peace and comfort of saying like, okay, she's with Anna.
Yeah.
They're all good. I don't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah.
That's like really what I look for. Because anything other than that, it doesn't really matter. I want kids and I want a family.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want is a loving mother. And that in itself is ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because they have to give up like everything, you know, for the most part. You don't have to. You can still work. But at the end of the day, it's like you're giving up potentially your body, all these things just to take care of a little you.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the most important.
Yeah.
And you can sacrifice anywhere. You can sacrifice for true love, but you won't achieve true love if you're sacrificing so many things around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing is, we're only human, and the idea of true love being, you know, you being able to make the ultimate sacrifice for somebody else, like, is everyone here familiar with the term agape love?
Yes.
You being a youth pastor.
Yes,
you
I'm a pastor, so I would.
Yeah.
Yes.
So agape love indicates that, you know, it's essentially pointing towards Jesus's ultimate sacrifice, dying on the cross and dying for the sins of people, not just the people that existed up to his death, but continuously throughout eternity, right? Dying for our sins as well, post Christ, BC. So I mean, it's like when you think about that, that is the most transcendental love that could ever exist. It's inhumane almost, right? It frankly it is, because Jesus, you know, it's a godlike love. So can we ever get there? No. Can we strive to get there? Yes, but we're bound by our own flaws. We're bound by all our human limitations. Yeah. And so I think the idea is that, you know, if you're capable of making such a large sacrifice for someone, it shows that you do have true love for someone. But just because you think you truly love someone doesn't mean you should put everything up, you know, on the table for sacrifice. That's simply not how we function. It's not realistic. Yeah. So there's a limitation to which how much we can sacrifice in the name of true love versus, you know, calling it actual true love based on sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the important thing to recognize is that, like, with the sacrifice thing, I think one thing is it's not like we have to sacrifice to prove it. It's the idea that we would. And so to respond to the idea of like it being inhumane or maybe not achievable, I would wonder, like, what do you guys think? Because I think there are a lot of scenarios where you would take a bullet for people, and this is even at, like, I would say, even at like the level of friendship. For example, on a battlefield, I know soldiers would happily die for their comrade. Right? I don't actually think that's too far-fetched to think that they would happily jump on a grenade, because I've heard and seen many stories around it. Same thing for a mother and her child. They're very happily willing to do it. But that doesn't mean that, you know, the day that they have their child, that, you know, they do, what is it, like Sakopu or something, whatever it's called? Seppuku. Yeah, seppuku. And then they're like, that's how my child knows they love me, you know? But I think it's the idea that, like, if you really do truly love someone, there is no extent to which you would sacrifice. But here's the thing. I think the right partner in love, that has love for you, would not put you in those situations where you have to do that. Yeah. So yes, we are human, but I also think when it's reciprocal and you're in a healthy relationship, then in that case, they're not going to put you in those situations where you have to make the ultimate sacrifice. I do think sacrifice is a part of love and relationships, and we do it, and I've done it in relationships before, whether it's sacrificing something I like for a weekend to be with her, or in little things, bigger things, whatever the case may be. But the idea is, if there's like a mutual understanding, you're not going to put each other in these scenarios where you have to commit to the ultimate sacrifice. That's never the idea. Yeah. But the idea is that given in those conditions, faced with, will I have to lay my life down for this person? I can name on one hand the amount of people I would go to that extent for. But I do think the idea is that we don't need to do it to prove it. But if those conditions arose, I think for the people that we really love, it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I know, like I said, less than 5 people on my hand that I would go to that length for, which also alludes to the idea that it is very rare to reach that level of love for somebody.
Yeah.
But that I wanted to make that distinction. I don't think it's about proving that you can that you will do it or that you do it. It's more so knowing that you have the ability to, but there is a mutual respect and understanding that you're never going to put your partner in a situation where you have to make these ultimate sacrifices.
You shouldn't pressure them, nor should you have the expectation that they should, right?
Yeah.
Now that being said, would you take a bullet for me, Matt?
I don't know, Dan. I'm not sure.
That's not
I don't know.
Agape. That's not Agape.
I don't know.
Bro.
That's not. I don't know. I honestly, to be quite frank, I know it's less than 5. Do I know all of them off the top of my head? No.
Good to think about it.
No. For the reason that people might get jealous. Don't get jealous. It may be you. I could be lying right now.
You just don't want to say it.
I just don't want to say it.
You don't want to disclose.
Yeah.
It's for yourself.
Yes, exactly. Because what would happen if a robber came to my house and made me choose with a gun? Did some Saw kind of shit. Then what? You put me in that position, Dan. Would you want that on your shoulders? I'm just kidding.
I mean, do you have Agape love for me, Matt? Is that what you're saying? You can keep the guard up. It's cool.
I'll keep the guard up.
I was just going to say, and that was a good distinction you made, because I was working off the ultimate sacrifice definition, if that's the definition. But I also see there's a problem with the sacrifice part of it, because I think sacrifices in of itself obviously vary in degree, but it could be used in a manipulative way. And this is something I have to be careful about because I'm the provider. I have a very similar story where I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing all these things all day. I'm working. Can't you see all this kind of stuff? You should be doing that. And I think that sort of language, that sort of rhetoric is almost transactional.
Yeah.
Is where I'm doing something, you need to be doing something in return. And I don't think that factors into true love where I'm doing something and now I expect you in return. I think that's more transactional than it is true love. Which is why I would have a different definition. And actually, before I get into that, even in my own, because you mentioned like the immigrant families, like I see that in my own, for example, my own father is, something I know, and maybe this could be an interesting distinction. There's a difference between my mom and my dad. And I know my mom has true love for me, and I know my dad definitely does not. And one thing that just gave me an itch as a kid was, my parents divorced, but my parents divorced, and you have that sort of tug back and forth between your parents of, you're staying with your dad for a certain amount of legal time, then you have to stay with your mom, you have to go back and forth. The thing is, and kind of a plus side to being a divorced kid is you get a lot of money. Because they're both trying to sort of win your love.
Bribe you.
They're trying to bribe you. And they'll even ask sometimes, like, oh, how much did your dad give you? How much did your mom give you? And then,
Juice it up a little bit.
Yeah, you juice it. Maybe I'll say a lower number, even though maybe I'll say, like, they gave me $20, even though they actually gave me 50. And then, you play that game. You're just a kid. But something I noticed with both my parents' philosophy is my mom would give me money or give me resources just because I'm her child. She wouldn't expect anything in return. If anything, I was kind of a terrible child. I was kind of a terrible, I didn't deserve the money she gave me. However, with the money my father gave me, there was always came with it expectations. So if I knew if I took the $50, if I took the $100, I know within a week's time he's going to bring it up and say like, oh, you just want money from me now. Okay. I gave you money and you're not going to do this for me. And just something about that, one is transactional, but also to me cannot be true love. Even though a parent can, and it's also almost for yourself. Like it's already expected of you as a parent to do these things. So I think even though you're doing a lot of sacrifices, even though you're spending your time and doing that, oh, I'm doing it for my kids, but that doesn't really take away anything from you. If anything, it gives you, status, or it gives you, the image that you're a good father, the image that you're a good parent. And so, at least to me, even as a child, I thought, how could that be love? Even though I'm a horrible child, my mom does it anyways, because that's love on her end. And that's why I think it can't necessarily just be sacrifice. And I like what you said, is that somebody who loves you wouldn't even want you to make that sacrifice. And I think that's where it has to be reciprocal, is one person is looking at the other completely and for their needs. And that's why I keep bringing up that point, is if they loved you, and I have no doubt perhaps you guys may have had love for your partner, but if your partner loved you, they wouldn't allow you to do certain things knowing or seeing you.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I mean, the only thing that separates us from animals is empathy.
Yeah.
And hopefully your partner has enough empathy to see, like, oh, this is bothering them. I'm going to do something for them. Not even I'm doing something negative. It's more, what can I do to better their existence?
Exactly.
Or their experience? And with my relationship, I always felt like, I'll bring her flowers today.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring her favorite little chocolate chip ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring her this. I'll bring her Baker's French fries.
Yeah.
You know,
Oof.
do things that she loved.
Mm-hmm.
I never got anything like that. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's like really annoying. It was never like, money was a factor, but like I didn't like, oh, I'm making all the money. I was never like that. I didn't really care because I was living on my own. It was so nice having my own place. It was cool.
Yeah.
That was like a fraction of it. It was like the little kind gestures. Like I come home, I would always initiate, hug her or kiss her. She would never do it to me. It's like just little things. It's like I'm out hustling all day, trying to provide so that we can have a nice time, have our own place, and it feels like there's no love there.
Yeah.
So it really felt like it was one-sided love.
Yeah.
And I could tell that she was deeply in love with me, but I think she kind of came from a place where she had really bad relationships,
Yeah.
bad experiences. So she didn't really know how to be like this open, bubbly person.
Yeah.
Because she's just been like destroyed by so many people,
Yeah.
and like so many bad experiences just kind of led her to kind of have like an apathetic view of everything. So it's like, I agree, love doesn't need to be ultimate sacrifice, but there has to be empathy there. You have to be able to
Yeah.
see your partner and be like, you look upset. What's wrong? Talk to me.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be like, oh, he's upset. I'm going to make him a medium rare steak. This is
Yeah.
my favorite thing on the planet.
Yeah.
I'll come up, a medium rare steak, perfect, with mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
If I came home to that after a long day, if I text her, something bad happened, I'd be like, this is the one.
Yeah.
But, just like the little things like that.
Yeah. That's why I think I think, like you said, love in your example was one-sided. I definitely think, and I want to see what you guys think about that, is I don't think love necessarily has to be reciprocated. I think you can have true love for somebody, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to return back to you. And I think that's the risk that comes with love. I think you can't have trust without risk. But I think to reach true love, I think you do need the other person as well.
I do agree. But I guess I've never really been there, so I'm not quite sure. I think I wouldn't even say I was ever truly in love.
Yeah.
I was definitely, I loved her. I would like to say I was in love, but I don't think I could go like, what if I really think about it at the beginning, I would fall in a grenade for it. But like when things start getting crazy, it's like, I need to protect myself because this is going way too far.
Now, this is sort of tangent because we're kind of diving into this. But a question I had earlier was, how do you think the pandemic impacted your relationships? Do you think that if it wasn't for the pandemic, maybe it would have had a healthy trajectory? Maybe it would have had a different outcome as well?
We always spoke about how had we met under different circumstances, and even at the end too, like the timing wasn't right, right towards the end of the relationship too. So I mean, pandemic aside, it was just the circumstances, socioeconomic conditions that kind of brought us together too, just on the culmination of, how we lived our lives and how we met, right? So the people that we were prepared, at least we thought, to enter into a serious relationship. Like I even told myself and her that I know what comes with this relationship. I know it's going to be it's a very messy beginning to the relationship for, reasons that have not been stated yet. But, I'm willing to take that risk because I see the greater reward. And in retrospect, I still don't regret that despite everything that's happened. But I would say that had we met under different circumstances, it might not have happened at all. Right? So it's interesting how love comes about too. It's not like this picture perfect, like, the situation, is like, you're not necessarily always primed for true love. Sometimes it just kind of is birthed out of out of struggle.
Yeah.
Right. And that is kind of a miraculous thing too. So when I look back on it too, I'm not like that wasn't true love or something. And I've thought about it time and time again, where I was like, this, how could that have been true love with all the transgressions that had occurred between each other?
Yeah.
But then it's also, you think about the lengths that you went to for each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way I could have done that for like not even a handful of people, you know? And vice versa, same for that person. I can, despite my complaints about the relationship, I know that, you know, I've done just as much, if not more, wrongs. And what you were saying earlier too about how true love isn't about having the expectation for it to be reciprocated, that resonates with me strongly. That it's probably my deepest regret in that, you know, despite my frustrations, the one thing I wish I could go back and change is having that expectation, leaning into this expectation, and thus leaning into that for like whenever we had arguments, right?
Yeah.
It's the one thing I wish I could change. And granted, had the relationship persisted, I don't think it would have been any better.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about true love, is that, you know, if you're truly in love with somebody, you're not gonna behold them to the things that you feel they owe you.
Yeah. I think so in my definition, because you gave the ultimate sacrifice definition, I think love can encompass a lot of things, but the problem is without those certain things, I don't think it can. That's why you hear us using the language of, don't you think someone who loved you would do this? Don't you think someone who loved you would have that empathy? Someone who loved you, because, and I'll just speak from my own experience, but it's interesting when I look at you two, I think your stories, obviously for you two, are very similar, which is pretty crazy. But when it comes to me, I'm kind of the one at fault. Like I see, as I'm hearing your two stories, you both are two people who want to have like that true love, want to have that love with a partner. It just wasn't reciprocated back. Which is why I think, like I said, you can't have true love without the other person. However, in my case, I found it very difficult to have that true love for others. Is where I think the partners I had definitely easily could have, probably did have true love for me. I just couldn't reciprocate it. And that's where, for example, like we said, can somebody who you have true love for, not care? Can somebody who has true love for you, and this is them to you, not have empathy, not understand you, not, trust you, all those sort of things. I think it's interesting when it comes to the words. I think love is unique in its case that it's not like a one singular meaning. It's usually, for example, it's easy to understand trust, right? As you could tell when you trust somebody, you could tell when you have trust or don't have trust, you build trust, all that kind of stuff. It's easy to identify passion and care because there's very easy things. You know what it is and you know what it is. You know what it is and you know what it does. But when it comes to love, I feel like people use love in place of all those other things. Is you feel love, but then no one can really give an answer, but then it leads down this route of it's something unattainable and I guess I'll find it when I find it. And I mean, I don't want to sound privileged, but because I found it, it almost makes everything else, all my other relationships, feel like that could have never been it. Mm-hmm. And the question that, part of why I wanted to talk about this on this season is because, okay, so let's go back to me in the past. How would you now go about finding that love again? I'm lucky that I found it now, but how would you ever go about finding it? Like if you're single or if, just got a breakup kind of thing. But I think because unique is in this way where it encompasses all these things, I think then you have to start saying, is without these things, it can't be love. Is in your case, if your partner didn't understand you or didn't see you for what you were doing and didn't have that empathy, I just don't feel comfortable saying that is love. I think she could be perhaps a caring person. I think she could be a nurturing person. I think she could be all those things, but I wouldn't call it love, because if she didn't have empathy, I mean, just listen to the sentences. Can somebody who loves you not have empathy for you?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Empathy is a very important factor.
I think it's an important factor. So is trust.
Yeah.
Like if you trust somebody, you could trust anyone. You could trust your doctor. You trust a lot of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean you love them.
Yeah.
You could respect a lot of people. You could sacrifice for people. Is what you mentioned about the guy, seppuku. No, wait, no, that was the wrong example. The example of somebody falling on a grenade, but not necessarily have love. But it's interesting how love doesn't work that same way. Is you start putting all these things into love, and you realize love is which is why it's difficult for people to find it, because I think it does encompass all those things. You can have respect and not have love, but you cannot have love without respect.
That's 100% true.
You can trust and not have love. You could sacrifice and not have love, but you can't have sacrifice. You can't love without sacrifice and trust and respect and all those sort of things. Which is why it's harsh to say, but I tend to go and say probably that wasn't love, and I think that's better, because at least for yourself that it wasn't, and I'm going to keep finding it. I mean, in my own past relationship, and I know we have to reset the camera, so I'll just finish this quick. In my very last relationship, I feel like we had everything. I feel like we had, it wasn't a bad relationship. We had a lot of all those things. We had care. We had respect. We were together for 5 years, and we had all these elements. But there was like one moment that happened in our relationship that really woke me up to everything and realized, I don't think you see me. I don't think you understand me. And also, I don't think I can go to you when I need to be vulnerable. And just like what I said about respect and sacrifice, I don't think that's something somebody who loves me can have. And so I think in your cases, in my own definition, I think love is a recipe. And I think if recipes can change and recipes can be modified. There's different versions of Louisiana chicken. There's different versions of soups, but the recipe itself can't change. And I think if you start taking out certain core things like respect, like sacrifice, like trust, it can't be it. Somebody says, "Oh, I know I'm lazy," and you continue to be lazy. You can change it. You're prone to anger, so why don't you change it? I think people feel comfortable in the things that they say they know, and they attach it to their identity.
Consistently popped up within yourself. The reason I ask that is, how are we all holding ourselves accountable to every relationship we enter? I think it's easy for me to say like, oh, as soon as a girl does this, that's a red flag. One thing I've noticed though, as I know is and I use as a litmus test, is if I start dating somebody